right, listen, I want to tell you a little bit about our guest, and I will mention that once again, my conversation with Katie is this is you're going to be seeing a pre-recorded conversation because of Katie's availability. She's very busy, but I want to tell you a little bit about her, and then we're going to show this conversation that I had. And once again, just as we do anytime that we pre-record a conversation with the guest, you can still interact in the chat. Katie will be able to see this later and answer any questions, respond to comments, and it doesn't keep you from participating. But let me tell you about her. My guest today, Katie, is making a return visit to Coffee Breaks. You may have tuned in when she was on, and it's been now, I think, a year and a half or so ago that Katie was on. But she is the owner of a unique travel agency called Magical Mystery Tours, which has been in the business of planning surprise vacations for more than a decade. For Katie, the story starts even earlier. In 1997, her dad planned a Christmas getaway for the family and kept the destination and all activities a surprise. Weeks in advance, mysterious red envelopes began arriving in the mail with clues about the destination, the weather, what should be on the packing list, and what activities were in store. And then, early in the morning on departure day, the family piled in the family car and set off on an unknown locale, keeping an eye on road signs throughout the journey to try to guess where they were going. By that evening, they had arrived in Nashville, Tennessee. The trip was such a success that it became an annual family tradition, leading to many of Katie's favorite memories with her family. Now, Katie uses her background in mystery travel, her own travel experience, and her expertise to plan surprise getaways for customers and help them create unique and treasured vacation memories of their own. As a professional travel consultant with more than 9 years of experience, she's also well-versed in the tourism industry and a great resource for travel insights. And once again, the conversation you're about to see was recorded a few days ago, but you can still comment and ask your questions in the chat. Katie will be able to come in later on, see those, and respond to them. So please welcome back Katie Truesdell. Well, Katie Truesdell, welcome back to Coffee Breaks with Steve. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you again and to find out a little bit about what you've been doing, but also kind of your perspective on what's been happening in the world of travel as we start to get our mindset back on getting back out there, whether that's locally, domestically, or internationally. And I guess the first thing to talk about here is we know that a lot of things were impacted by the pandemic in terms of travel. Stopped entirely for periods of time and then resumed with severe restrictions. And I think a lot of people are curious now, as we're in this more or less post-pandemic phase, as things are starting to get back to normal, what has really returned to normal in terms of travel? What things are still a little bit affected in terms of restrictions or conditions? And what do you see in travel that has changed, if not permanently, at least for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so like all of life, travel was completely upended during the pandemic. And, thankfully, I would say much of it has returned to normal at this point. For me, the biggest thing that I am grateful is largely behind us are all of the COVID era destination entry requirements for international travel. As the world opened back up and people returned to travel, and navigating that piece of the puzzle was a nightmare. Not all countries were open to travelers or to all travelers, and the ones that were had any number of requirements from, pre-authorization paperwork where you had to get approval and a QR code sent to your phone to scan at customs, or, COVID test protocols, vaccine requirements. Any combination of things. Every country was different, and they were constantly changing. So, from as a mystery travel provider, that was obviously very challenging to navigate on behalf of clients when they're planning international trips for them. But mostly, there are some things that are still in place here and there. Mostly that has been simplified or done away with, and it's largely as simple to travel internationally as it was prior to 2020. Okay. So some of that to still be aware of, but a lot of that has gone by the wayside. Honestly, the first thing that comes to mind in terms of a COVID era policy that's still in place now is Disney World. So when they closed in 2020 for about 4 months, after they reopened, they instituted a park pass reservation system to control crowd levels. And if anyone's unfamiliar with that, basically you had to purchase a regular ticket admission, and then you also had to make a free reservation for the park you plan to visit.
That's right.
So that's been it's been a very unpopular policy. You know, it takes away some spontaneity and flexibility from travelers. You have to plan more in advance, and that policy does still exist today, and it's unclear how long or if it will go away. Yeah. But I will say, at least they're not hitting capacity, or the capacity is not as locked down as it was during the early days of that. So there's not a huge chance that you're not going to be able to visit the parks that you want to go to. But it is just something to be aware of, something that's in place. And then, you know, in terms of kind of the two major things that jump out in terms of things that have changed for, at least for the foreseeable future, are the things that are impacting all kinds of industries, which is higher prices and staffing shortages.
Right.
You know, that's, you know, who among us has not seen help wanted signs around, you know, businesses in our towns, or, you know, done a double take at prices at the grocery store or something. So this is not limited to travel itself, but it definitely impacts just the experience and expectations that people have. You know, and if people haven't really traveled, haven't returned to travel yet, I think I get a lot of queries in with people kind of expecting 2019 pricing, or, you know, those early COVID era deals when they're trying to encourage people to get back out there again. And that just doesn't exist right now. Prices are as high as I've ever seen them. And the staffing shortages that exist everywhere, you know, just can cause ripple effects. You know, it's longer wait times, you know, potentially flight delays, cancellations, you know, things like that. So it's hopefully, you know, some of that will stabilize in the coming years, but it's definitely something to be aware of as people are getting back to travel now.
One of the things I read recently, and I'm not sure if I understood it correctly, I don't know if you know about this, but I saw something very recently that indicated that to now travel into the EU countries, either already happening, or they're going to start requiring some kind of a pre-application process to travel to Europe. Is that an aftermath of COVID? Is that really just tied to sort of overall security issues, or do you know where that's come from and how that's being implemented?
Yeah, it's been pushed back a few times. It's actually been in the works. I don't know when it started being talked about, but I don't think it's a reaction to COVID. That may have played into it to some degree, but I think it's just general kind of security issues that people want to. I can't remember if there's a fee or if it's just, it hasn't been implemented yet. I think it's supposed to start in November.
Later this year.
Right now.
If they don't push it back further or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
So is it similar to like a having to apply for a visa, or is it more just a pre-application process, like through, you know, through the State Department or something, the same way that you would normally? I know there are other countries that have certain restrictions or requirements.
I think it's I don't know if you or if anyone watching has done the Australia visa as a U.S. citizen. It's kind of similar to that. It's very obviously we haven't done it yet, but what I read about it is that it's supposed to be really pretty quick and easy. You fill out this, you know, pre-application form, and I think you're supposed to have, you know, what you need back from them within, you know, 15 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it's a quick turnaround process, and it's an online process. You don't have to mail something away and wait weeks to hear something back.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, that's to come.
Okay. Now, airlines, we need to just spend a couple of minutes talking about airlines. I mentioned to you about some of the debacle our family encountered at the Christmas holiday with family attempting to travel here. Yes. But there are a lot of changes that seem to be coming right now. We obviously saw certain things happen during COVID regarding some cases being able to verify pre-testing or even airports having testing centers for immediate turnaround, but masks on planes and a variety of things. But airlines seem to be making a lot of changes right now that are geared to trying to restore traveler confidence.
Yeah.
And you're seeing different things either being officially implemented or being hinted at by various airlines that are supposed to try to attract people. But there have been a lot of issues. Families trying to sit together has been an issue for a long time, even well before COVID. There seem to be a lot of recent reports, and some of this you kind of also know is probably also has happened in the past, but the news media picks up on it. Lost luggage, terrible issues with lost luggage, and some people reporting that it's taking weeks to get those things back. But what are you seeing with airlines in terms of either changes that they're making to try to restore reputation, or just things happening that may affect positively or negatively customers who want to travel using the airlines?
Yeah. I think every airline has had kind of their moment in the spotlight, so to speak, in terms of letting travelers down. And some of those issues are not fixed overnight. They're going to probably continue to cause hiccups for a while, namely Southwest's outdated operational system that caused that Christmas meltdown. And then there's pilot shortage, there's general crew staffing shortages. But I do, to your point, I do think that there have been some changes made that are a benefit to travelers in the meantime. This is a little bit old news now, but the elimination of change and cancellation fees by the major airlines is a huge benefit to travelers.
Yes.
Life happens, and this really offers some flexibility and some just peace of mind. In fact, I actually had this play out for a couple of my customers just in the past couple months. I had 2 people have to cancel their mystery trips just for unexpected issues, and I was able to cancel their flights with no fee. Their full flight cost is retained as a travel credit that's good for a year. So that really helps people out a lot, that money is not just gone. To address the family sitting together issue, that has been a problem for a long time. And United just announced, I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, that they have a new dynamic seat map, basically, where if you have a family or group traveling together where there are people in your party that are less than 12 years old, and there aren't enough open seats for you all to sit together, you can select adjacent seats, even if they are that premium preferred cost, for an extra charge, which is great, because those costs add up as when you're a family traveling together.
Absolutely.
And American actually just announced yesterday, I believe, that they're doing something similar. Frontier had announced that as well. And typically with these kinds of things, so that when the major airlines make these announcements, the others tend to follow suit. So I would not be surprised to see this from Delta and other places as well.
Yeah.
Which is definitely a help. And the other thing is that I think it's becoming easier for travelers to kind of manage their reservation online or within the app, the airline's app. One of the biggest headaches during the beginning of the pandemic, or even during the Southwest meltdown, but that's kind of a whole separate issue, is just waiting in these outrageously long lines to get an agent on the phone, because whatever you needed to do couldn't be done on your own. Right. But within the past year, I've been able to do lots of various changes for travelers on the website, on the app, or even just using the web chat system. So that helps people too. Just, being able to handle those things without involving someone from the airline is a benefit as well.
Then you mentioned already, we talked a little bit about pilot shortages and staffing issues, and we have seen some things that are still obviously affecting that in terms of, in some situations, either not as many flights available through some of the airlines, some of the scheduling cutbacks and issues like that. But again, presumably the airlines are doing the best they can at this point to try to address those issues. To the best of my knowledge, what I've just seen online and just looking at some of the options available, most of the airlines still have a fairly full schedule, barring things like weather issues or those types of things. And it's not like you're finding such an elimination of flight options schedules that, great, now I only have, from major airports, to and from major airports, 1 or 2 options a day. I mean, there's still a pretty robust schedule available through most of the airlines.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have worked with clients all across the country, and I haven't, seen an issue where, oh my gosh, there's only this flight offered on this day. So the schedule is really full. And I do think I know there was just an announcement maybe within the last few days about a couple airlines canceling a bunch of flights over the summer. And I know that can be frustrating for sure, but I'd rather they do it now and get their schedule sorted out rather than leave people in the lurch, day of.
Yeah.
So I do think they're trying to get on top of it, and it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah. Is it still a good idea? Obviously the airlines are trying to build a better reputation and provide additional options in terms of cancellations or rescheduling flights, that type of thing. Do you still recommend to people, for the most part, that particularly if they're traveling long distances overseas or having to do things where they're making reservations well in advance, that travel insurance, is that still a good option for people to consider depending on the circumstances of their vacation, their trip?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, with the obvious caveat that, people need to consult the terms of the policy they're considering. Right. And I can't speak to everything that would or would not be covered, but it really can be a worthwhile purchase to protect your travel investment. Just a couple of basic examples of how it can help is if you have a flight delay or cancellation that has caused you to miss out on some time in your destination, or maybe you pre-booked some activities where you can't get that money back and you can't reschedule it. Having travel insurance can help you recoup those costs. Mm-hmm. Or if your flight, or if your luggage is delayed and doesn't arrive for a few days into your trip, you obviously will need to purchase some toiletries, some basics to get you through, and travel insurance can provide coverage for that. So those are a couple of just, common things that happen a lot that travel insurance can help with that.
And sometimes people just need to look, for instance, sometimes their credit cards include mm-hmm. coverage for those types of things, or if they have a AAA membership and they've gone through, they're just different ways to check to see what kind of resources and even benefits may be available if they're not thinking about consciously. Need to look into those things and know what those benefits and options are for you if you're going to be doing any traveling.
Yes, 100%.
Are there any other things? We talked a little bit about airline cancellations and travel insurance. Are there other things in terms of planning that maybe people should be thinking about just to avoid unexpected issues, even if those have to do, we talked a little bit about potential for some additional applications to places like the Disney parks or traveling overseas and having to pre-schedule some things. I think it's always a good idea to make sure, if you're traveling international, is your passport more than 6 months from expiration. That's a biggie.
That was going to be my number one recommendation. That's 100%. If people haven't traveled internationally in a few years, they may not remember when their passport expires, and not everyone always knows about the 6-month validity rule. So basically, if your trip, you come home on April 30th and your passport is only valid through May 15th, a lot of places that's not going to work. You have to have 6 months validity past your trip. So that is a last minute thing you would have to deal with. That is just, it's not going to be fun. So check your passport before you make any plans, for sure.
And I know a lot of people are reluctant. They're going, shoot, I have a passport that I had for X number of years. I did a lot of overseas travel. I have all those cool stamps in my passport, and many of the countries aren't stamping anymore.
Yeah.
It's all electronic. And they're going, I want to keep that as a souvenir. And I think it's important for people to know, yes, you do have to send your old passport in as part of the renewal process, but they send it back to you. They invalidate it, they punch holes in it or something and send it back. So you do get to keep your old passport as a souvenir.
Yes.
Your previous
that's true. Don't be worried about that.
Don't be worried about that. And I want to kind of transition here and start talking about magical mystery tours. And I think one of the ways to do that is to ask you kind of what have you seen as you're helping clients plan? What is popular right now as things are reopening, as you've seen in the last few months, both domestically and internationally? What are the key places that people should be considering going to that might be their best options?
Yeah. So I mean, during the early days of returning to travel, I kind of had to tamp down on international travel a little bit, just because it was just such a nightmare to navigate. And some it didn't work for some people if they weren't willing to do the COVID tests, or they weren't, for any number of reasons. So I would say international travel, just in general, is very in demand right now. Speaking of passports, just because of how many people want to travel internationally right now, the standard renewal time is up to almost 3 months at this point. And even if you do it expedited, the top end of the timeline is almost 2 months. So it's, people want to travel internationally. So, I mean, Europe is hot. And some of the places that stayed closed to visitors for longer, so like Australia, New Zealand, a lot of countries in Asia, places like that you really were off limits for people for a longer amount of time. Right. I think that people are looking at those as well. So, so many good options, lots of places to explore.
And domestically, I mean, think about places here within the United States. There are a lot of different things, and you still have to look at cost. I know one of the things that I would still love to do someplace, either in the United States or up in Canada, is take a semi-cross country train trip. There's some great sightseeing trips that you can take through the Rockies and in a variety of places by train. There are obviously road trips that people can take in their own cars or their RVs or whatever they want to. And even places like you can take cruises up the Mississippi from Louisiana. I mean, there's so many things to see and do domestically that people may go, I'm not into international travel. I don't want to be on an airplane for 10 to 18 hours or whatever it might be. There's just so much that we can look at even here, almost in our own backyard sometimes.
There absolutely is. There's so much to do and to see. And, I think during the pandemic, when people were a lot more hesitant to travel internationally, they did get to explore a lot of that more. And that was really fun for me, because I love doing domestic trips. There's so much in the US to see. And honestly, I may be a bit biased, but I would be remiss if I didn't note that mystery trips are a hit right now. There's been a lot of demand for them as travel has opened back up, and actually the website Thrillist included surprise travel in general, including magical mystery tours, in their adventure guide for 2023. So that was exciting.
That's nice.
That was fun. Yeah.
So let's pivot here a little bit, because you brought it up, and let's talk a little bit about Magical Mystery Tours, your company, and the unique characteristics of what you do. Yeah. And I know, when you were on the show a while back, and it has been a while, we focused a lot on that. And I want to take a little bit of time and just assume that people either may have forgotten, or there may be people who weren't into coffee breaks at that point, who are hearing you for the first time. Tell us a little bit about Magical Mystery Tours, what you do and how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So Magical Mystery Tours is a travel company that specializes in mystery trips or surprise vacations. So the high view of that is fill out the mystery travel survey on my website. And then I plan a trip customized just for them based on all of those specifications. And then I get everything booked for them. They have no idea where they're going. About a week in advance, they get some information so that they know how to prep. So they know what time to get to the airport. They know what to pack. They know what the weather is going to be like in their destination. And then a day or two before they are supposed to leave, they get their travel reveal packet in the mail, which is the most exciting part. And that is basically tells them where they're going, tells them why their destination was chosen, all the practical information, their flight, their hotel, rental car, any activities that were booked, all that kind of stuff, a guidebook, dining options and activity options. And I always recommend people take that to the airport and open it there. And I would say the vast majority of people do. Some people just are too excited / nervous and open it early. But most people take it to the airport, open it up, and find out where they're going. So it's very fun.
And when you talk about that survey on your website, I mean, that's a very complete survey. You get a really good profile of people, their interests, places that they would like to go.
Yes.
What works domestically, what works internationally, their budget,
Mhm.
and how many people are going. I mean, it's nothing that you are so skilled at putting all of that together that by the time they're getting that reveal package and opening it, the surprise is marvelous, but there's nothing that they're going to go, oh, great, how did we end up with this? I mean, the
Exactly.
testimonials on your website, on your Facebook, over and over again, our people are absolutely thrilled, and you get return customers as a result.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I always tell people who are maybe a little bit nervous about the surprise is, this is not a trick. Like, I want you to
Right.
have a good time. I'm planning this just for you based on the information that you've given. So the survey is very comprehensive, all of the things you mentioned. But then I always offer to chat with people on the phone too, if they want to provide more information. And I think that, just helps people feel a little bit more comfortable and just getting all of that stuff on the same page.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, just, I mean, not only is it it's just a unique experience. It's a fun adventure, a fun way to travel. But I think there are some real tangible benefits that
Mhm.
do have people coming back. I have people who come and do a mystery trip every year.
Yeah.
Um, one of my favorite things that people say is that it really it allows them to be present in the moment. I just had someone return from a trip that said it was so great. We weren't on our phones the whole time trying to find the next thing to go do or see or where to eat. We had our packet, we followed your recommendations, and it was just like we just got to relax and enjoy the trip. And I love that. I think that's
That
that's
should
cool.
be the
That's
point.
cool.
That should be the
Yeah,
point, right? When we go on vacation, is we should feel like it's fun while we're there. We're able to focus on the events and the surroundings and everything else, and we come back feeling like we were blessed and rejuvenated and refreshed and
exactly.
creating great memories, and that's what you're all about. So and
Exactly.
and I think it's also important to mention that while typically your service, your company, while it focuses on the mystery surprise trips, you've also provided just general trip planning for people. But right now you've been getting so many requests, you've had so much business around the mystery tours, that's all you're able to focus on right now. You're not doing standardized tour planning with people, you're just right now focusing on the mystery trips.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. I've always had the option for just traditional standard travel planning services for people who want to work with somebody, but who aren't totally up for the surprise, which, that's totally fine. But yes, right now I've had to suspend most of that. There are a few exceptions,
Sure.
just because mystery trips are in demand for sure.
Well, we're going to wrap this up. A couple of things I want to make sure we cover. First of all, if people do want to get in touch with you to plan a magical mystery tour, and we're going to be showing this stuff and providing it on our sites as well, but how do people get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
Absolutely. So you can visit my website, magicalmysterytours.com. My email address is on there, and also the social media sites if you want to follow along. All of that stuff is linked there.
Yeah.
So I would love to work with any of you.
Any final thoughts that you have about returning to travel in general, or magical mystery tours, or anything else that you'd like to share?
I would just say, pack your patience. Like, this is a new COVID changed everything, and it's a new era of travel. But just, there's so much cool stuff to explore in the world, and I think if we focus
Yeah.
on that and just kind of go with the flow, then it helps smooth over any of those difficulties that can arise in this new time we're in.
Great advice. Katie Truesdell, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us on Coffee Breaks with Steve, for sharing your expertise and your perspective. And we'll look forward to seeing how many people now are going to be checking out Magical Mystery Tours and engaging you in some travel plans, some surprise and mystery travel, because it's a fantastic service.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to chat with you.
Absolutely. Take care.
Take care.
There I am. I'm back. I hope you enjoyed that, and I loved all the comments and questions going on in the chat. It's to me, it's always special when we have somebody like Katie on here who brings so much perspective and information that is, I think, important. I did want to very quickly share her website. We talked about it. I did put the website in the chat a few minutes ago, but you can go to her website at www.magicalmysterytours.com. You can see what it looks like here. And you can see that on that website, it is possible as well to, let me get this out of the way for a minute. You can click on and get to social media there. At the top of the website is the Facebook and Instagram. At the bottom, email us. But you can go to Katie's Magical Mystery Tours website. Also, a lot of testimonials out there, both on the website and on Facebook. So please take some time to do that. And really, I mean, this idea, my family has always, our kids will testify to the fact that from the time they were fairly young, the idea of mystery tours, surprise vacations has been and continues to be something that we have done and do with our family. And so it's something that I promote the idea. And you think to yourself, oh, that's a little bit risky. Just look at what Katie does, if that's something you think you might be interested in. Listen, we're going a little bit long today, so I do want to share what's coming up the next few weeks and then let you go. Next week, Derek Nelson, another guest who's returning to Coffee Breaks with Steve, a musician, singer, songwriter, guitar player, educator, mentor. He has been featured on a number of shows. If you were a fan of the show Glee back in the day, you may remember seeing Derek on a number of the shows as the guitar player who was playing with the people on Glee in the background there. He and his family have toured, he and his brother and his sister. But Derek is going to be coming back to talk about what he has done as COVID, again, as things have opened back up and he's getting back out on a tour schedule and doing a variety of other things. You'll get a chance to hear from Derek. Fantastic individual. I know you'll be interested. And then in a couple of weeks, Lisa Steele will be back with us. Lisa's been on the show a couple of times, and we're going to be talking about failure. And we shy away from situations where failure is part of what's going on. We're afraid of it. Lots of times it's impacted us. And we're going to talk with Lisa about how we can learn to take failure situations, what we label as failure, and turn them around and actually embrace the situations in life that may look like failure. And then in 3 weeks, we're going to have a new guest on. Anna Leah Young is an expert on etiquette and manners. And we're going to talk about that, kind of what has become passé. There are things that used to be sort of part of standard manners and protocol in social and even professional situations. What remains, things that we should be aware of and be teaching our kids to do, and kind of what has gone by the wayside or has been modified at times with that. If you have ideas about topics or guests that you would like to see on Coffee Breaks with Steve, you can email me or you can private message me with that same email address, cbwsteve@comcast.net, to share your ideas. Also want to mention once again that Coffee Breaks with Steve, in addition to being on Facebook and YouTube, you can find episodes of Coffee Breaks with Steve on some of the key podcast sites. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and another opportunity to invite people to tune in and share what our guests have been sharing with us and to learn more about Coffee Breaks with Steve. All right. Been talking for a long time. We've shared a lot. We've gone a bit long today. I appreciate your patience and I appreciate your participation in what we're doing. As I clear my throat one more time, just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the conversation. And just want to encourage you to come back next week and in the weeks ahead and share with your friends some of these topics and the guests if you think they'd be of interest to those people. In the meantime, please do take the time to get out there in the world, whether you're traveling right now or just seeing what's going on in your own community, in your own neighborhood. And as I always ask you, please find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you and have a great week.